Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back. If you found us, you're probably interested in the metaphysical world, psychics and things like that. Got an amazing one here today. We're going to talk about opening up to the spirit world. How do you do that? How do you make a connection? Not only does he do readings, but he also teaches how to do that. Timmedium is back with us. Hey, Tim, how you doing?
Good, Steve. How are you? I'm
I'm
doing
good.
great.
I'm still moved by the reading that you did for me the last time we got together. And it was just a impromptu situation. And you started going into talking about my mom who passed 4 years ago. Now, I'm always honest. And I think if anybody wants to look back to that podcast, you could see that I was blown away. But here's the thing. First couple of things you mentioned were specific, but somebody might say, all right, skeptics, it might be a little generic. Okay. Then you said something about my mom's nose. And there's no way. I mean, so specific in that she had half her nose removed because of skin cancer. And that was only about a couple of years before she passed. That was kind of the beginning of her decline. Just it's life changing. She stopped driving. She was definitely up there in age, but for me, that's my validation, Tim, that you're plugged in because that was completely random. You could have said, what about her finger? What about her foot? What about her heart? No, that was extremely specific and really spot on. So, amazing. No other words, Tim.
It was quite sporadic and it was quite quick. We dove into there quite quick, actually. And it was,
Yeah.
I also liked that she also had shown me you guys walking hand in hand. Now, that had some meaning to you as well. Yeah, kids do that, but there is a specific meaning to why your mother would have shown me that as well. And ultimately there was because you did have
Yeah.
something when you were younger. I didn't know that, of course, but
No,
she wanted to touch upon that,
I
right?
had separation anxiety, like really bad, like to the point where, first day kindergarten, I latched on her leg. Like that was just, the way it was. So holding hand, comforting. So that was definitely, it wasn't generic. There was a reason,
So,
and that
yeah,
that led us to the nose reading. But yeah.
to the wagon wheel too, right? I just recalled the wagon wheel as
Oh my
well.
gosh,
Yes,
I forgot. I
yes,
forgot, and I need to
yeah.
tell my sister about that. Thank you, thank you for the reminder. So you said something about wagon wheel, random, and I didn't remember it until you said it. But Wagon Wheel was the name of a restaurant near our house that we all used to gather during holidays, that kind of thing. They've changed names probably three times since. It's now called the Meadow Club, has been for a bunch of years. But the Wagon Wheel, and as soon as you said it, I could see myself at the table, which was by a window. The place had a very woody feel to it, but again, random wagon wheel could mean nothing. It definitely meant something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very important to your mother to talk about those three specific things that she had brought through. And yes, there's some generics earlier on, which might seem generic, but and that leads us into opening up. And opening up is just creating space for the spirit to come in to be able to work with you. And it's relatively that quick, actually, and we are away. So opening up is something that happens quite quickly for uh, depending on your development. I would say it happens quite quickly for the most part. When I first started, it would take a little bit of time. There's lots of teachers that recommend, say, per se, half hour of meditation prior to school or whatever the case may be. I don't. I expect my students to be ready to go. And yeah, yeah.
Wow. When you say opening up to the spirit world, how do you mean? Opening up to messages, just opening up your mind to receive what's coming your way?
Um, If I may, I'll explain it like this. So when you first start driving a car, you're prepping, you're getting set, you got your seatbelt on, you're nervous, and away you go. Okay, you put it in gear, you look around, you check all your mirrors, and you start slowly going into the direction either backwards or forwards that you want. Now with mediumship, it's relatively the same thing. But as you go on, 2 weeks or 2 months or a year later in your driving, you just put it in gear and away you go. You're not concerned about anything. And it's relatively the same as something like that. It would be. I didn't choose my words carefully there, but it's very similar to driving a car. The more you drive, the
Mhm.
easier it is to dial in and away you go to get to your destination. And it is the same way with as a mediumship. There's no difference. The more you do it, the less time you spend to have to, because it's easier to you to recognize the place you need to get to where you're making space for spirit to come in and to be able to work with them. Yes.
Do you find, Tim, that in the beginning, that it took you time to get into your zone to start doing readings, whereby now you're there, you're open to the spirit world, you jump right in?
I do. And it was just like in the show last week. I didn't prep for that. I had no idea that was going to happen, but and it certainly came about in quite a quick fashion. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't go back and meditate or sit in the power or do those things, because I frequently do. I don't. I might go 6 months at a time without meditating, and then bam, I'll start meditating and I'll meditate for 6 months again,
Mhm.
and that gets me to a better space, to where I feel more comfortable, more grounded, more centered. Things such as what's most important for us as readers, right?
Huh. You, yeah, that being said, do you find that you're always connected to the spirit world? Is your door always open and you receive, or do you have to open the door intentionally?
I'm going to split this up into two different things, because once I stop working with a client, that's when their family members leave. That's when I expect them to leave. That's the deal I have worked out with the spirit world. Now, my team that I have around me, that's a little bit of a different story, because now we're talking second to second, we're talking minute to minute. I'm expecting them to show me the way or to send me things of valid information, whether it be this, that, which direction I should go, just daily life things, maybe, or just something that's going to send me upon my day. And it doesn't have to be anything spectacular. It could be something as simple as smelling smoke. Now that just tells me somebody's here by having a cigarette smoke, right? And which
Okay.
happened to me today. Funny thing, and there's no possible way where I was today that I should have been able to smell smoke. And sure enough, I thought there was somebody outside, even, and there was nobody outside. And that just tells me that a certain individual from the spirit world was here with me today. So, and those things are quite important for all of us to be aware of. When I first started, see, it was 3 weeks at a time. I would notice something. Now I pay attention second to second. It's up to me to do that. It's not for everybody, but for me, doing the work I do, I like to be in touch. I like to be aware. The little things mean the big things, and that's pretty much how it goes for readings too. If you're going to let the little things pass you by, the reading's going to be over and you won't even have started, because you're not paying attention to actually what they're sending us.
Well, in the case of the reading, the impromptu reading of my mother, that would be it. You mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned, child hand in hand, which, by the way, there's something else I didn't say connected to that, and I don't know if this would be a connection to it. I could return to that in a moment, but those were to me, that was the opening, you know, door opener, and then the other stuff came in. So if you just breeze by those smaller things, if you will, we might have missed, wagon wheel and nose, you know.
And that's how you get there. I always tell my students, make sure you bring in what they're giving you, because that's why they're giving you the information. The spirit world never sends you information to play games. They just don't do it. They're not about that. They're into specifics. They're going to bring you specifics. They want to talk about certain things. I'm just going to go to a reading I did last night, actually, and excuse me, and the spirit was very present with her sister that she wanted to talk to, and it wasn't her sister; it was like a sister to her, but it was one of her best friends. And at the end of the reading, when the lady left my home, she says, "Who smokes around here?" And of course, nobody does in the home. And she could see smoke, and then within that, the light had blinked, and it was just we were both sitting there going, "Yeah, that was perfect, perfect timing."
Wow. I
Yeah,
want to say this, instant feedback, steve@gmail.com. If anybody has a question, um, Tim's here for another few minutes, and we're going deep in here in terms of what you do and how you can teach people to do what you do. Um, can we all learn
one hundred
to do what you
percent.
do? Yeah.
Uh, if you want to, you have to be aware that it does take a considerable amount of effort and time, uh, patience, of course, because you're not going to flick a switch. It's not going to be two classes and you're going to be a professional medium. Things just don't work that way. Even the highly intuitive people I do have in my school right now, I ask them to put that aside because what they have over there, they'll be able to use later on. But to get you to connect and get you to understand where you're going is something that takes patience.
Hmm.
And for highly intuitive people who are set in their ways, sometimes that's not so easy, but they quite quickly see that there is a direction to where we come from and where we go. And it's actually quite special to watch them progress through the development process of to that point, and then they can apply some of their own stuff as they cruise through the process and the development. Very interesting. It is. It's very unique. Everybody's unique.
With you saying that, is the learning curve different? Does it vary between people? Like people say I'm intuitive. Maybe I pick up on this sooner than maybe somebody who maybe not so much, or is it, everybody kind of gets it in the beginning.
Everybody has intuition. There's nobody on the earth plane that doesn't come to the earth plane with some sort of intuition. Now, what they do with it's another story. If In a classroom setting, most people get a boost from their classmates working actually because they watch their classmates work, and we discussed it last week in school uh, about how everybody feeds off everybody else what's inside the classroom because it's very common for that to happen. Once you see somebody knock a reading out of the park, and then it's they're up next, they're going and the
Right.
next thing you know, they're right into the reading and they're doing amazing things as well. And everybody feeds off everybody. Everybody learns from everybody. It's not just them learning from me. It's them grasping from their fellow students, and that's a big deal. It's more that has more to say about things than a lot of things. Just feeding off their fellow students. Yes.
Want to share this one, which comes from Terry, Sarasota, Florida. She says, "My husband's name is Tim. He passed away almost 2 years ago. I'm finally getting ready to hear from a psychic. Are you getting anything from him at this time?"
If it's the bald-headed gentleman, the little pudgy-faced gentleman, that might be somebody that she might connect to. I'm not sure if that's who she's referring about, but that's who I see. That's come in quite quickly. He's got short. He's a very short. He's a shorter gentleman actually, and there's something about his fingers. They seem to be swollen for whatever reason. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but that's who I'm getting.
Huh. Oh, and you said fingers swollen, you said?
Yeah, she has fat fingers, and he's showing me his fingers and they're shorter fingers. They're not longer fingers. I'm not sure why that is, but that's what I'm being shown.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. And unfortunately she's not here on the line to validate, but I'm sure she could follow up with an email. But interesting. Okay. Anything else before we move from that?
He's also got light skin. Even though he is from Florida, he's got light skin. He does have something wrong with his skin, I do believe. It's not just that he has light skin. I think there's something going on there. That's what he's showing me. And it also seems to be like it's a white flaking situation there. So that, and that would be how I identify with this gentleman who's here, just by what he shows me. And now I can go into more personal things, or would go into more personal things once I identify with the gentleman, her loved one, and make sure that it's a good connection, which I do feel it is, because he also likes to play cards. He also likes to gamble. So that's what he's showing me. So and that's where I go. That's what I like to. But ultimately, that I would need a yes or a no. But I feel pretty good about the information I'm giving the nice lady for her loved one. Tim was his name.
Yeah. Wow. When this happens, does it start with a few little pieces of information, and then the more and more comes through?
It does. Once I identify, and that usually happens quite quickly, the identification process, because I typically, for the most part, I can see them. Now I just start listening intently to what he wants to talk about. And I basically just follow the spirit around, and I just relay the messages he wants to talk about to the sitter.
Mm.
And from that point on, it's usually usually a lot of yeses, or a lot of correlation between the two. Yeah, the medium won't always know, of course, why you're being shown what you're showing, because you're not part of the family. But the sitter or the client certainly will, by the information that the spirit's giving. And ultimately, what they can do is talk back and forth, and they do in the readings. I allow that. Most mediums don't allow that, but I'm up for that, because it's very important that they have a good connection, and the
Mm.
emotions that are being felt is pretty powerful. It's a yeah,
Those
very
who are
unique.
skeptics, that this been said before, oh, psychics cold read, where they read your face. When you read my mom, yes, we're looking at each other on a camera, but I didn't give anything up, except that when you
No,
mentioned the wagon wheel, and actually I didn't connect on the wagon wheel right away. I had to think about that. Um, but when you said the nose, in 2 seconds, I was like,
mm,
okay. I didn't give you anything prior to that.
no.
So there's no way you could have, looked at my facial expressions and gotten anything. Um, Trisha from Sarasota just checked back. She says the person that you're describing, who is bald and short with swollen fingers, would be my dad. He says, I'm not sure about what you mentioned regarding skin, but my husband Tim and I used to gamble all the time.
Perfect. Okay, beautiful. Okay. Which of the two, if you may ask her, and she's probably listening, who has the lighter of the skin? Because he seems to be showing me white flaking. I'm just going to leave that there. But it's the gentleman with the gold ring who has, and it's not just, and it's not, and I believe this is her father. And it's almost like a school type gold ring, but it's not a school. It's not a school ring. It's something of that nature, though. Okay.
Hmm.
And that's the gentleman that actually is stepping forward here to want to chat with her. And I do believe that's her father. Um, so, yeah.
Wow. Interesting. And I know this is harder because it's almost like pass it on. She's not here to validate things. She's following up by an email, and I get it. I said I'm finally getting ready to talk to a psychic. So
Yeah.
maybe she's comfortable. She said he
She,
passed less than 2 years ago.
sorry,
Hmm.
Steve.
Wow.
She wants to talk to an evidential medium, not a psychic.
Okay.
Psychic is something a little different. They do different things. I don't mean to offend anybody when I say this, but evidential mediumship is specifics. It isn't somebody standing behind you. There's somebody. It's who's behind you. I'm going to tell you who's here and why they're here and what they want to talk about. That's the difference between a psychic and an evidential medium. There's two different vibrations, and I don't mean to hurt your feelings or anything like that, of
Sure.
course. Yeah.
Um, she just reached back, so I'm just going to share this real quick, and then we'll move on. But she is saying that we adopted two girls from Colombia, and maybe that's the darker skin reference you made.
Yeah, no, I was going to. It's okay. I'm just going to leave it there. If she could just respond back about the gold ring, the school ring, the gold ring. There's like a school ring. It looks like it has a bump in the middle. Now, that's something of importance to, I believe, one of the gentlemen there that has come in. And this isn't the girls that she's talking about. This is very specific about a gold
Yeah,
ring. Yeah,
gotcha. Ah,
yeah.
how does it work when shall we say, classes in session where you show people how to do this? If somebody signs up, is it group sessions? Is it a one-on-one? What's the process to get somebody on board to do readings themselves?
I typically do a one-on-one with them prior, and I just basically ask them one question, and they give me their answers to this one question. Then I know which muscles they use and which is their go-to muscles or strength, because we all have muscles to do this type of work. But inside a class, it's typically a classroom setting. We read other people as we go through this process. If I have 8 people or 10 people in class, it's not too familiar, and everybody has deceased loved ones on the other side. So uh, that's typically how we practice, and we go through that process. Now, I'll help them along the way. I'll show them how to get there with very specific things. We start from ground zero. That's why I always ask them to leave their intuitive strengths, or not strengths, but what they've learned intuitively over there. So in this
Mm.
class we can learn what we need to learn. It's a little different than most. It's yeah.
I never talked to anybody that teaches this. I've talked to, I guess you would call them evidential mediums and also psychics. And I've never talked about teaching. So that, for me, that makes you very unique. Do you know it's an evidential medium when they are giving you facts, when they're giving you specific details?
They To be an evidential medium, you have to give specific details, because everything you get has to come from the spirit world. So anything that I'm going to give you is going to come from the spirit world. It won't come just random out of the blue. I'll have to either see it, I'll have to hear it, I'll have to understand what the spirit's telling me to tell you. And that's how we got to the holding hands. That's how we got to the nose. That's how we got to the wagon wheel, because that's what your mom had showed me that was most important to her, like her diamond ring is. Now, her diamond ring's come in a few times here, Steve. Now, who has your mom's diamond ring? There's a diamond ring that she's showing me.
I would have it, um, and I'd have to find it, but there was a
Yeah.
few, but that'd be one of them. And my thought was to keep them for my daughters.
Yes, because your mom's talking about that diamond ring, and she talked about it a little earlier. I just didn't bring it through, at the beginning of the show when we and here it is. She's brought in enough to right.
Hmm.
Okay,
Interesting.
so yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I remember that you said, but
Who's She's talking about the who keeps the journal in the brown? There's those brown books, the brown journal, the brown book.
that would be me.
Yeah, she's talking about that journal actually. So okay,
Wow.
and she's also talking about the artwork actually. So and this is your mom here. Who's got the artwork? Who's got the picture with the horses in it?
I'd have to think about that, but we had an abstract picture that had a horse. It was at my aunt's house, and she was into that, and that's her sister. I don't want to say any more. If you're getting anything else, then I
It's
can give.
okay. Yeah, that's okay. You won't need to. It's just what I hear, what she's been talking about. She's been here the whole time since you brought her up. That's why, because I had forgot about the wagon wheel, but once those things come back to me, now there's a reason for that, because now I'm dialed back in, or she wants to say something more, of course, because we didn't get the finish last time, right? So, and she's talking about you eating a lot of, okay, the salad guy.
Eating what?
Who's eating all the salad, Steve? Would that be you? That would be you?
That would be me, and that would also be my daughter who lives with me, who is trying to get healthier, a lot of different reasons, and all she eats is
Okay.
salad.
Okay, because there's also little cherry tomatoes in that salad your mom's telling me about. Is she not a big fan of cherry? Who's not a big fan of cherry tomatoes? Who picks that stuff out of there? What's going on?
That would be my daughter, and even though I buy them, she never uses them. It's only me.
That's what your mom's telling me.
And just an hour and a half ago, I went to the supermarket with my daughter, and we were picking out stuff for salad.
Perfect.
You make this up. That's the truth. Wow.
Right on.
Jeez.
So mom still made her presence felt, and actually, how she made me. Now she's also talking about initially when she came in, she's talking about that purple. It's not a dress, but it's something to do with purple. But she does have a blue dress she wants to talk about as well. Now go to this purple thing on the wall, and it looks like a rug or a carpet of some kind. I'm not sure. This came in right at the beginning of the show as well. I didn't bring it in, but goes back to what we. Purple is a big deal for your mother.
She did like purple. I'm trying to remember the color of one particular thing. We're out of time. This is like crazy.
Sorry.
I have quite all right. I have a pillow made from her shirt, which, could look like a dress, the way she wore them. Dark blue, could be like a purpley dark blue. And it was made into a pillow, and it has something on it that says "I'm always here."
Beautiful. Beautiful. Those two things came in together. So I just have to give you it. I know we're rushed here, so I'm just throwing a note there and stuff, but that's what you've been showing me. So, yeah.
Anybody could say that's generic. The salad, and I won't even go into the background of the salad, how important the salad is right now.
It is, because that's why your mom brought it in. Yeah.
Oh. How do we find you, Tim? How do we find you?
Timmedium.com. Google timmedium.com. All my information's there. I'd be more than happy to help anybody who wants to sit for a reading or even talk on the phone or any information they're interested in.
You're like a race car. Like you start down the track and you're just kind of, add a little bit more speed, and then you go. Which is what you did last time, and you did this time. And again, the salad reference is very, very important and relevant. It is.
Beautiful.
It's not just something, that you threw in there. Really important.
Sorry, Steve.
No, I got nothing.
Okay. I just wanted to talk about that lady that was on before about this ring again, because I'm being shown this ring again. Now, this ring has got some brown on it. So it's gold, but it has some brown on the top. It's that ring we were talking about. It's not a high school ring, but it's a brown ring, and she'll know exactly which ring that is. I was showing that again just now. So
maybe next time we get together, she'll give us that validation. We're out of time. Timmedium.com is the website. Tim, thank you so much. You're amazing.
Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate it.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.